Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of Eye of Africa. I am your host, Aina, Fadina. Today we are here with Chid Liberty, the co-founder of Liberty and Justice. Liberty and Justice is the first fair trade apparel manufacturing company in Africa, and it's truly a pleasure to have you here today.
Thank you so much, Aina.
And thanks for having us we kind of just bombarded your space.
Yeah, no, it's cool. We have a
you.
little bit of space, but we try to use it for everything, so now we can count film studio in that mix.
So you talked about Liberty and Justice.
Yes.
What is Liberty and Justice?
So Liberty and Justice is a growing company that focuses on currently manufacturing in Africa. We're big proponents, and we have a brand name called Made in Africa, and we're really huge proponents in the idea that the continent shouldn't be looked at as a place simply to do charity all the time, and this program and this charity with kids with flies on their faces and distended bellies, but that so much from our continent, most of the business that's being done on our continent is done with primary products, exporting primary products, and that means sending raw diamonds, timber, iron ore, oil, whatever it is, from our country without doing any of the processing on the continent. And we're very big proponents in making sure that value is added in Africa. And the reason that that's so important is that that's really where jobs are created and where people get to start raising their income levels. I mean, if you look at a country like Guinea, where I think their oil exports have them at, I think, a $40,000 per capita GDP. So that means that everybody in the country should be living on $40,000. That's almost comparable to America and European countries. However, 80% of the people are unemployed and 80% of the people can't read. It just shows you that the strategy that I think so many African governments have employed, that let's just start in commodities and then later on we'll diversify, isn't working. And what we really need is a strategy. Liberty and Justice to me is almost a political movement that says, when things are good, now in Nigeria with Buhari, everybody's saying, we should diversify. But we waited until oil prices were completely through the basement.
Exactly.
Why aren't we in the good times figuring out how to diversify these economies, investing in the right infrastructure, investing in manufacturing so that our people can actually live, I think, great lives. And so that's kind of, at the end of the day, what Liberty and Justice is about. Of course, in the name you hear that we think that all trade should be both free and fair. And we specifically have a focus on working with women, because we think that most of the peace and economic security that's going to happen around the continent and otherwise around the world is going to be led by women.
Which I think is always proven. I always say, like in Lagos, the person that controls the market is the woman. We call them Yaoloja, which is like woman of the market. Yeah. And if she shuts down, the whole community shuts down.
And even during the war in Liberia, they were the ones who were still making sure that things could function somewhat. In fact, they were the ones who were going between sometimes the warlords to negotiate because they were the only people left to pass. They were neutral. They were the market women. And so absolutely, we agree.
So obviously comes with a lot of challenges.
Yes.
And I try not to focus on the lack of electricity. We already know what the narratives are, and I'm sure viewers know what they can fill in the blanks.
Yeah.
How are you able to sustain that business and sort of chip away even with all these, and these are major challenges.
Yeah. Well, I would say that I'm a big believer that business is 80% psychology and 20% everything else. And so I think the number one thing to be focused on when you're working in Africa is your own psychology and how you see situations. Yeah, it's very easy to be frustrated and to want to give up, and if it's not power, then it's this government agency is asking you for this. If it's not that government agency, it's a different government agency.
Right.
2 hours ago or 2 days ago, I got an email saying they're going to come shut your factory down unless you make XYZ payment. And again, it's just all craziness. And I think my psychology is, number one, nobody's going to shut my factory down ever. And number two, I tried my best to tap into what is a real faith that what we're doing is so critical and so important that there's no challenge on a day-to-day basis that will get in the way. And luckily, I was raised, again, sort of going back to my mom, to have a lot of faith and to put my energy in the right places. And so that's the answer.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah, and I know that, for example, in Nigeria, manufacturing is a major problem, and Lagos is a hub. It's like Cape Town, Johannesburg, Lagos, Kenya.
Yeah.
But a lot of the designers who can afford to, they manufacture in Turkey, they manufacture in London, in New York. When you can go to Ghana, go to Kenya, and go to Liberia to manufacture. How are you trying to sort of do this inter-African trade? Is that, if you thought about that approach, or?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the biggest things, so on two different levels, I'll just sort of talk about on the baseline technical level, and then I'll talk more in terms of long-term strategy. So on the tactical level, what we're sort of building right now in Made in Africa is a network of factories that have all sort of signed on to certain standards of operating and make it sort of a commitment to the continent about fair work, environmental sustainability, but of course about creating a better Africa. And I say Africa and not Nigeria, Liberia, or whatever, because I actually do mean Africa. To me, the biggest advance that we can make as African people is actually to unify as one country, as one state. As one state, we would be, as of today, I think the fourth largest in terms of population, the fifth largest in terms of economy, right behind Russia. We would have I think, third or fourth largest armed forces if we combined our armed forces. And then it becomes, a lot of people are African conspiracy theorists. I'm not exactly sold. But, all the African conspiracy theorists who believe that, Russia is here destabilizing this and the Americans are destabilizing that, and this person is destabilizing the British, Zimbabwe, my man Mugabe can't make one day of anything without blaming it on the British. So here, yes, they can destabilize Zimbabwe, and yes, they can destabilize Liberia, but to destabilize a Pan-African state would be very, very, very hard for them. To go in and fight a ground war in a Pan-African state would be very, very, very hard. And so to me, what I really hope we see happen is the beginnings of it, though I hope we don't stop there, of what Europe did of saying, okay, we're going to break down borders of trade between the countries. But to me, that's just the first step. That is not where I want to go, because I think we can see what happened for Europe. There's so many concerns when you do that, because Italy has its own identity, Greece has its own identity, they have their own political agendas, and now you're saying, well, you have to be on the same agenda in this way with Germany. And you say, no way, that doesn't work. So what we actually need is a complete transformation of our continent into one nation and one people. And I think at that point, you will see a dramatic transformation in terms of our numbers with poverty, all these social things that we're trying to accomplish with poverty, literacy, education, incomes. All of a sudden, we have a real path to making something happen. It's almost impossible for Liberia to do that on its own. But as part of the Pan-African state, yeah, it can happen. And so I know this was a question about fashion design, but you can imagine how much easier it will be for a designer in Lagos who doesn't have to deal with all the paperwork that gets from Liberia to Lagos. It'll be like getting something from California to New York. No problem.
Right. Now that makes sense. And the other issues, I talk to a lot of Nigerian designers because I've done consulting for them. I'm like, why don't you just use a factory here?
Yeah.
Well, I don't want this person stealing my design, and I'm just kind of like. How do we break down that barrier of do you face that, or?
Yeah, I think that we are, I don't know.
Yeah.
We do a lot of things as Africans, I think, to shoot ourselves in the foot, but it's not to say Americans don't do the same thing or whatever. I mean, I think everybody's a little bit paranoid. you know, I think luckily for me, I kind of came up, I think both in the entertainment industry, but then also in Silicon Valley. And, you know, in Silicon Valley, you don't really, like, if you go to an investor and you say, hey, will you sign this NDA before I tell you my idea? They'll laugh at you. It's almost like the stupidest thing ever, because what gives you the nerve to believe, of all the smart people, all the PhDs around here, that you think you're the first person to come up with this idea, really?
Yeah.
And so, yeah, we're just kind of used to realizing that it's not about who has the idea, when they have the idea, blah, blah, blah. It's really about who is able to execute on things and make things happen. Who, yes, has amazing, brilliant ideas, but then adds on other amazing ideas and and the ability to execute to actually be a world-changing business. That, to me, is what I hope we see more of in Africa, and not just like, oh, I got ideas and I don't want anybody to steal them. I talk to entrepreneurs all the time. I coach a lot of entrepreneurs. Talk to them all the time, and I'm worried, and I had one person who didn't want to show me her label, one person didn't want to show me this, and I thought, like, the amount of arrogance it takes to think that anybody in this world is concerned about you or what you're doing is like, come on,
Yeah. And even if they are, as you said, execution is key.
Totally.
That's what I always try to focus on.
Totally.
Like, just, no one can execute your vision.
Yeah.
Even if you told them, fine, go ahead and do what you need to do.
What you're basically saying there is that there is somebody who's possibly going to execute this better than I can. And that's what you should be considered. That's what you should be worried about. Like, you should be hustling so hard that there's no way that somebody who has way more money than you, that has way more resources, that has way more reach, could beat you because you're that good. If you're that business person, you don't have to worry about anybody stealing anything from you ever.
So let's talk about uniform.
All right.
What is uniform? You're decked out in uniform. I feel like...
Yeah, we can get you started. Don't worry. We're in the office. Don't worry.
I did see a bomber jacket that was... I was like, okay, this is cute.
Yeah, the bomber jacket is
the white
really
one.
hot right now. Yeah, the white bomber. That was all me. That was all me.
So what is uniform?
So Uniform is a clothing brand that we started after the Ebola outbreak in Liberia. And the reason that we started it is actually pretty backwards from why you should start a business. We had a pretty remarkable business as a manufacturer for American brands. Our customers included Hager, Feed, Whole Foods, Itochu, which is PVH, and Calvin Klein, and all those companies. And so it was turning into about a $20 to $40 million a year business in recurring revenue. Very, very, very nice business. The problem that we ran into was after the Ebola outbreak. During the Ebola outbreak, we had to shut down our factory and manufacturing altogether. After the outbreak, we could not get a single customer to come back and order from us. They did not want to come to Liberia. They didn't want to come visit Liberia, talk about putting in purchase orders. So we were kind of stuck in this position where we had just invested over years, about $5 million into this factory and into the project overall. We had now hundreds of workers that depended on us for their day-to-day livelihood. And now we had no customer to bring to them. And so we started thinking about ways that we could get the factory back up and running. And one of the things that concerned me was that we had all of this fabric that was supposed to go out in these orders for men's trousers for these big companies. And it had just been sitting in our warehouse during the Ebola outbreak. So what were we going to do with all this fabric? If anything, I just needed the space back. I just can't have all this dead fabric there. So as you can imagine, there probably wasn't a big secondary market for fabric coming from the Ebola outbreak. I can't really say, hey, as soon as somebody found out I was shipping it from Liberia, they would say, no, thank you. And so then I started thinking, well, what can we do with it? And what local businesses can we maybe start with it? And after trying many different things or thinking through many different things, we thought, okay, what about the school uniform business? Every child in Liberia is required, as I'm sure in Nigeria, to wear a uniform to school. In West Africa altogether, it's about a $5 billion market, mostly because of Nigeria. So we started thinking, what if we could start a legitimate school uniform business? And the women in the factory co-own the factory with me. They own 49% of the shares.
Nice.
And so we decide everything as a group. And so we went to the group and we said, listen, we think we should start a school uniform business. And they said, okay, that sounds great, boss, but we still have the same problem. There's no money in this country. We're the people who survived Ebola. None of our families were affected. None of us lost a breadwinner. None of us lost anything. None of us lost our job. And we can't afford to buy school uniforms right now.
Right.
So how is the rest of the country
Right.
when 50% of people who had a job have lost their job?
Right.
So I said, wow, damn it, I don't know. And we started thinking through it, and I said, okay, well, again, concerned about just the warehouse problem. Well, how can we just get all this fabric out of the warehouse? Well, what if we just gave the uniforms away? Like, what if schools were shut down in Liberia for a year because of Ebola? One of the main reasons parents can't send their kids to free public school is they can't afford the school uniform. So what if we could actually put together some type of program where we gave school uniforms to people and for free. So long story short, we decided to do it. We decided to pay for it using our own brand, which is called Uniform. We launched Uniform last summer on Kickstarter. We had a remarkably successful Kickstarter campaign. We wanted to pre-sell. We thought it would be successful if we could sell $50,000 worth of t-shirts over 45 days. We sold $50,000 worth of t-shirts in the first 5 hours of the campaign, and ended up doing about $230,000 on Kickstarter and then another $170 off Kickstarter. And so then we thought, okay, we can really start this into a business, and we came back, we started designing, coming up with a full range. We launched it in Bloomingdale's in July and have had amazing sales there.
Okay, so it's one thing to start a fashion business, it's another thing to go into retail.
Yeah.
I think that's the gap for a lot of brands. You know, I've been in the business for 11 years, and I've seen brands that have huge immense amount of capital and did not survive the 2009 through 11 hurdle.
Yeah.
You know, you have brands who invest a lot of money in production, but they just can't get into retail. How were you able to do that? Because I think that's sort of like, not the icing on the cake, but that's a major accomplishment. Especially Bloomingdale's as well too.
Yeah. Well, I will say, as we say in Liberia, only God. You know, I can't really tell you how we got in there. We weren't supposed to. It wasn't even part of our business plan.
Right.
We had no intention of getting into Bloomingdale's. Somehow, somebody from Bloomingdale's heard about us after the Kickstarter, invited us in, and we said, okay, do you want to buy some products on consignment? They said, no, we want to buy the products. Yeah, we just want to buy it. They gave us the windows at 59th
I saw that.
and so, yeah, it was not a thing where we were out there hustling, trying to get into retail at all. No, retail sort of begged us to come in, and we said, yeah, why not? And so for us, it wasn't really part of the strategy. It just happened. And similarly, I think that's how a lot of things with Uniform have happened, whether it's the celebrity collaborations or it's just been us being out there and doing things that I think are fun and interesting and impactful and just attracting a lot of great people along the way. So yeah, I wish I could say that I had some grand strategy and I was executing really well, but it was really just the fact that I think, to be honest with you, Uniform, you know, somebody who started a lot of companies in my life, Uniform, for whatever reason, just has that extra thing that makes people want to get involved. As soon as they hear about it, they want to do something. You know, they want to come work here. They want to come do, like, people just want to get involved. And so, I've benefited from that alone, but I can't really take credit for that.
It's funny because, you know, lately I realized that it's not so much about your product. Obviously, your product is extremely important and you need to have, you know, world class, you know, doesn't matter who your consumer is, just make sure it's made extremely well, like, perfect. But I think the key point is people gravitate towards stories. And I think that's what gets people pulled in. So you can have the big names, which I'm sure is probably helping some capacity.
Absolutely.
But it helps them, like, you know, at a certain point, the everyday American or the everyday consumer, how do I identify with the story and why is the story important to, like, whatever it is that I'm feeling psychologically, emotionally. And I think that's probably what Uniform.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're pretty product obsessed. But yeah, you know, on a deeper level, I don't think that people buy products. I think that they buy feelings and they buy identities. And I think that what Uniform has really been able to do is tap into something that I think, especially with everything going on in the world right now and everything going on, particularly in the United States, connects us to something much deeper. In like the simplest way, it automatically connects you to a child across the world. And you know that you're having this positive impact on this child across the world that you don't know. You know, usually when you buy something from us, we send you a Polaroid of the kid who got the uniform. And so all of a sudden you get to see, you know, I think what is at the heart of our organization, and by that I mean Liberty and Justice, Uniform Made in Africa, which is that ultimately, you know, at least I hold the deep spiritual belief that we're not separate, that we're called different things and we're called different labels and we live in different places, but when we get to the ultimate essence of being a human being, we're not separate from other human beings. And I think that what Uniform has been really successful at is making people feel that, even if it's just for a couple seconds during the day.
That's a beautiful story. First question is what are the biggest lessons from, you know, when you were 16 to present day man, present day entrepreneur and everything?
You know what's really funny is that, like, when you're a 16-year-old kid, things are so simple for you. You're like literally like just running a bank account. And I was like running a bank account for a band of kids who were like 21 to 25 years old. And so, you know, like, it was just a really simple business. We played shows, we made money. We sold merchandise, we made money. We sold records, we made money. And so it was just very, very, very simple. And by far my simplest business, and I would say my most successful. And by that, I don't mean necessarily, like, this business is obviously bigger. But I mean, what I put into that business and what I got out of it were like crazy multiples. If I could be an investor and me at 16, I would take that deal every day. And so at the end of the day, I think what I think over the last 20 years, I've gotten a little bit more complicated, and something I try to remind myself of every day, especially because, you know, I kind of also came up in Silicon Valley. I went from like having a very, very simple business to then a business to a place where, you know, business doesn't really need to be a business. Like, it can be all kinds of things. It can be a lot of puffery. I think we're all seeing what happened with this girl, Elizabeth, with Serrano's, her blood company, where you can get a lot of stuff funded, a lot of people pumping you up, and there's really no there. There's actually not a business, you know what I mean? And so what I try to always remind myself of is, like, how can you break this down into like as simple as of a business as possible? And like, those are the businesses that I want to invest in. So for me, it's less about, I think I've become a little bit less theoretical in Silicon Valley about business, and more, you know, at best 16-year-old me, but really Warren Buffett, where I just like businesses where people really like them. People come in, they buy something, they pay for it in cash. The cash goes back to the investors. Let's keep it simple. That's like my big lesson. Anything that gets too complicated, where we start talking about this company hasn't made any money, but we think that it's worth a couple $1 billion, I'm skeptical.
Right. So as an investor, as an entrepreneur, as someone you've founded multiple businesses, and you're also on boards of a few things as well too. What advice would you give, number one, parents who their kid might be like, oh, I don't want to go to this class because I don't like it, I have no interest in it, I'd rather go to like brand practice or something, or whatever it may be. What advice would you give those parents?
Yeah, you know, it's funny because I think, some kids are just going to be different, and I was definitely a very, very different kid. I would say than like your traditional, maybe not so much than your traditional American kid, but definitely your traditional African kid, who is just like, you have two choices, lawyer or doctor, and that's it. I think now we're starting to see, though I don't want to take anything away from all the accomplishments that we've made as African people in the traditional education system, because I really think it's remarkable. Every time you read about any kid who's gotten into all Ivy League schools,
Yeah.
it's an African kid.
Yeah.
That's pretty remarkable,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Now, let's take a step back from that and say that, truthfully speaking, what we're starting to see from other countries, whether it's Finland or whatever, is that bogging down our kids in the 3rd grade with homework is actually like stifling them and not allowing them to grow in the way that we want them to. And everybody has different ways of learning. And so I hope, people always say to me, oh, Chid, you are this very you're the perfect example of an entrepreneur. You didn't take school very seriously. I dropped out of college. You started a business when you were really young. Like, these are all things that people are like, is the entrepreneur? And I actually think that that's false. That is one type of entrepreneur. And there are many great examples of people like that, from Richard Branson, who can't read because he's seriously dyslexic, or like James Sorensen Sr., one of our investors, who graduated from high school and started obviously a multi-billion-dollar company, invented everything from the heart monitor to the disposable surgical mask with a high school education. So yeah, there are these people out there who are super entrepreneurial, who make things happen with nothing.
Right.
But then there are also all these Harvard MBAs that are doing amazing things in entrepreneurship too. I don't think that one person is necessarily a better entrepreneur than the other. We're just very different. And so so I would just say, to parents generally, allow your kid to be different and allow them to try things. You'll be surprised at what talents they had. I can't tell you how many times my mom would tell me that, like, the clothes don't make the man, the clothes don't make the man. And now I can say the clothes help to make the man. They actually do.
Yeah. And to young entrepreneurs, what advice can you give them?
Just hustle harder than everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah, and hustle smarter than everyone.
Yeah.
And just, at the end of the day, most people give up very easily, super easily. And so not giving up is always your competitive advantage. If you are a person who doesn't give up, you're already ahead of 98% of people on the planet, because they will give up. They'll see something, they'll get scared, they'll turn around, they'll go for what's safe. Some people have to, because they're defending their family, or they're defending, something deeper, their faith, whatever it is. So some people have to give up, but if you can be in a position where you can run after things so hard that nobody can compete with you, I think you won the game.
So you're an avid surfer? Is it safe to call you that?
I surf. I wouldn't say that I wouldn't say I'm necessarily good. I like to be out on the water.
And then the one thing, I am obsessed with DJs.
Oh, cool.
I travel around your DJs.
Yes. All right. I love
and
that.
not in a crazy way, but like,
Well, you can follow me around. I ain't mad at you.
So so trap music and Afrobeat.
I love trap music. I love Afrobeats. I will give you like the best set of trap and Afrobeats ever.
Okay.
Including when trap and Afrobeats meet, like David O Fans Me, which is such a dope song with Meek Mill. To me, that's what music should be now. When I say music, don't get me wrong, I'll still go listen to some Nick Drake play some British folk here and there, but when I'm trying to, really get in the zone, get my Rick Ross face and my Rick Ross grunt on, that's what I'm listening to.
Can we get the exclusives? Seriously.
No.
I
you gotta
legit
take me to the club. If you take me and the film crew to the club, you'll see that every 5 minutes.
I legit follow like Black Coffee around.
Oh, wow.
I am like,
I get it. I understand why.
No, it's kind of like,
I understand.
It's a problem.
Yeah.
My sisters call me a groupie.
No,
They're like,
it's
you're such a groupie. I'm like, it's okay.
It's okay.
It feeds my soul. Music is my drug.
If you're having fun, I agree with you. I love to, and I think as African people, it's something in our culture that we, my friend Axelati, who is the right now the Minister of Commerce in Liberia, sometimes we'll just be in the most random place in Liberia. We'll be out on the beach and we'll see a bunch of, very local Liberian brothers and sisters just sitting there, and all of a sudden it'll almost be like a wait staff. And we'll see them cooking, and then some music will come on and they'll just be dancing and cooking. And he'll just say to me, the good time is just in our blood, man.
It's so true.
It's in our blood.
It's so true.
We love to have a good time.
Even at at parties, you have the waist up. Let's hear the beat. They're still doing their jobs, but they're still like
dancing.
Yeah.
So that's our people. We're not going to change.
So how do we close off? What is the impact? What impact do you want to see on Africa?
I mean, I would say this on a couple different levels. I would say that I have never believed in the narrative that most people have about Africa, even including Africans.
Absolutely.
And that, one thing that I can be certain of, and again, just a deeply held spiritual belief, is that the only constant in the world is change. And so if we look at the countries and the nations that were really prominent 500 years ago or 1,000 years ago, not so much that way anymore. And we're in the beginning of, I think, of what will become Africa's dominance. A lot of people can't see that because they're too caught up in the headlines of the children who are unfed and uneducated and blah, blah, blah. But where we're really headed is that we got a lot of resources, and our best resources are people.
Absolutely.
And so we're about to really be sitting on something extremely beautiful that is extremely valuable to the world. And that goes from our music, our film, our plays, our art. Like, if you really look at it, it's just a treasure. That's before we even get to the oil. We got the oil too, and we got the timber, we got the iron ore, we got the steel,
rubber,
we got it all. We got that. But we have all of these other treasures that are part of our continent. These amazing rugs being made in Morocco. We got so much stuff that nobody can really touch. And so for me, it's just about really realizing who we are and helping to promote that and create not necessarily that narrative, because I really don't care about the narrative that much, but just really creating that reality that as African people, we're awesome, and we have so much to contribute to the world, and we have to contribute it on equal footing to everybody. I think that we, being among a continent that's just reaching, I think, what I would consider political enlightenment, what we have to contribute to people all over the world who have been oppressed, have been colonized, and what we can be as an example to the world of how, as a people, to come out of that, I think is a really beautiful opportunity. And so that's sort of the Africa that I see. I always would read this interesting racist guy wrote a book, I don't know, must have been in the 60s or 50s, very, very smart intellectual guy, and he wrote this book saying, all you need to do is go to Paris and then go to a city in Africa to understand why Europeans are the dominant race. And I would like to create an Africa where that's obviously untrue. So that means building some of the most beautiful cities in the world and having you go to them and say, wow, these people are pretty damn phenomenal. That's what we're doing.
And even David, he just did the National Museum, David Ajayi.
Yes.
I'm
my gosh.
For
Look
me,
at that thing.
That's the perfect, that is truly what the Black diaspora, whatever you want to call it, whatever you want to call that from identity perspective. And I'm like, we're bridging the gap. The gaps, we're not even, it's like we're connecting. Yeah, we're connected now. And then you have a thing with A$AP Ferg. I know I'm really bad at these artists.
No, A$AP Ferg, this is another great connection of showing how, an African-American artist from Harlem, fashion designer, musician, working with us, and we're doing a whole collection. It's inspired actually by military gear, like the piece that I'm wearing. And the idea is really trading military uniforms for school uniforms. So with everything that we sell, we're giving away a school uniform. It's all designed with Ferg, who's actually a fashion designer. A lot of people don't know that. And so, you're going to see some really amazing pieces. It's a Uniform Traplord, which is his label's collaboration. You're going to see elevated pieces, a little bit different than the traditional uniform stuff that we put out. Really, really fashion forward, really cool, and I think you're gonna love them. if we can dress Aina, we know that we've made it.
We're down. I'm down. And I think the biggest, I always go back and try to listen to these interviews, but I think the one thing that I've picked up so far is if you love what you do, if you work hard, if you hustle, and the dots will always connect. Someone like you, sort of your passion for political, I don't know what the right word I'm looking for. It's like, political statements, your passion for music, your passion for fashion, your passion for, this ethical movement and providing jobs to those women. You're creating businesses around what you're passionate about.
Yes.
And not a lot of people are lucky enough to even find one thing that they love.
Yeah. Or if they love it, they can't really go after it for a million different reasons. So I don't want to sell that to anybody as like, this thing that can happen for everybody. Mm-hmm. I understand, because I think one thing that we're battling right now, especially as Americans, is our relationship with privilege. And I understand that my parents, in the way that they raised us with a lot of privilege. At one point we were essentially African refugees, so I don't want to say that it was necessarily economic privilege.
Okay.
But it was privilege nonetheless. You know what I mean? And so, I always want to make clear to people that it's sometimes it can seem like, man, all I need to do is follow my dreams, and it's actually a little bit different than that. I still went to school and I studied programming and finance, and I still hustled and sometimes had to work a job while I was running a company just to keep the bills paid and to invest in the company. So all those things are true. But at the end of the day, I think what it comes down to is, just a deep belief in what you're doing, and the desire to never, ever, ever, ever give up.
And the one last question is, and then we're done.
Okay, cool.
You are the face, because you mentioned the refugee.
Yes.
And you consider yourself a refugee.
Yeah, of course.
How can we change the face of what refugees look like, especially in today's day and age when everyone's so anti-refugee?
I think anybody who's anti-refugee, I mean, let's put it this way. I'm like trying to figure out what's like the political statement here that won't have me calling people a basket of deplorables, because I'm almost there right now. So, at the end of the day, for me, I think the answer to your question about how we make people more accepting to refugees all has to do with education. And I know that's a really roundabout answer, but unfortunately, what we're really suffering from, I believe, in America right now, and to some degree around the world with all these conservative movements, is education. Because I consider myself a conservative person, human being in general, pretty conservative. But I was lucky to be raised with a global perspective. I was lucky to be raised and to have to leave my country because of war. And so I understand that there's nothing dangerous or bad or wrong about me, and I have so many friends like you who were in the same position. Something happened and we needed to move from one place or the other or die. And I was lucky to grow up with a bunch of Jewish friends who had to go through that in the 40s. And so for me, it's just it's so silly to think that that in any way we became a superpower. China has 1 billion people. We have 300 million, yet our economy is larger. How did that happen? It's actually because we did over and over what we're doing right now as African immigrants. Right. First it was the English, then we brought over the Irish, then we brought over the Italians, then we said, now Africans and Mexicans are hustling on it. And it's like, wow, why would we ever want to change that? And if, again, I'm an armchair economist, I wasn't really trained in it, but if you really look at just the statistics, countries with open immigration outperform countries with closed borders, hands down. So to me, it's just look at the facts and invest in education. I think once we invest in education, we will see all of these problems solved. One of the most genius things that American conservatives, if you even want to call them that anymore, did was they drained all the money that we could invest in education and in social programs. And because of that, what they did was they created these people who were voting and not educated, and they tended to vote for them.
Right.
Very smart politically,
Right.
but it's turning our country
Right.
into a big shithole.
Right, right.
I will end on that.
I think it's appropriate. I don't want to be back in Nigeria on November 10th. Like, okay. Hi, Nigeria. I haven't lived here for 20-something years, but I'm back.
You're back.
Thank you so
anyways,
much. Thank you. This has been wonderful.
No,
this has been wonderful.
It was so good to meet you.
We touched on so many different topics, and
Cool.
that's the whole essence of this show. So
Awesome. Yeah, it
thank
seems
you.
really cool. I can't wait to see.
Thank you.
I appreciate it, Aina.
Thank you so much, Shed Liberty. I appreciate your time. Thank you to your entire team. Who's
all on vacation right now. That's what we do here. We vacation.
Yeah, they've been super awesome. This is a very insightful and wonderful conversation. And until the next one, take care.
Get it.